Hey, Kateri, I know you're still signing on. Aha, it says you're connected. Can you hear me? Hey.
Hello? Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
Good to see ya.
Yeah. All right, so you can hear me and that works and everything?
Yep, I can hear ya. Let me see if I can. Do you see an option to screen share? I think that might be disabled for you right now. Let me see. Here, I'm just making you a co-host, so that will probably give you an option now. Maybe at the bottom?
Yeah.
Cool. Do you want to try that and make sure it works?
Sure. Let's see.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I can see the file finder window.
Okay. Is that a bird?
It looks like it's maybe opening. I just see the list of images, the thumbnails of images.
Your screen sharing is paused. There's something on the top that says your screen sharing is paused.
Oh.
And then I can hit a button that says stop share.
I'm gonna stop your share.
Okay.
Try it again. Okay, now I see the full bird image.
I can make it bigger. Okay. I guess I could also, I have like one other poem that I was gonna read. I guess I could even show that.
Yeah, that could work.
I mean, I don't care if people follow along. I like to follow along when
I'm
listening.
I think that's good.
Okay. Unless it'd be distracting. I don't know.
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
People can close their eyes if they don't want to see, if they just want to hear. I think, well, sharing a screen versus a window might make a difference. I don't know. Because I just see the one bird photo right now.
Okay. Yeah, let me just make sure I know how to get back to the the main screen. Oh, do I have to hit stop share?
Yes.
Okay.
There you go. Perfect.
I just met the other resident who came yesterday.
Yeah, Lydia.
Yeah.
Good. I guess she was supposed to come in on Saturday, but had car trouble or something. So I guess she got in a day late, but that's good. Was that?
Yeah, she said something about her changing her car around so that it could make it up here.
Got it. Yeah. I'm excited to hear about the ranch too.
Yeah, it was fun. we drove through the pasture on this. Is it a gator? Is that a thing?
Oh yeah. Gator Ranger. It's like kind of, they're different brands of the, 4-wheel, the like ultra golf cart.
Right.
Nice. Well, we ended up.
I was recording. I was recording, like just running my recorder, and the thing which I've been using for years and years and years, like finally filled up. So like the end, I couldn't record, and she had some like really good stuff at the end.
Oh, dang.
Tried to write from memory. But
of course, that happens.
Of course.
Well, we ended up, I think we have like 24, 26 participants tonight, or registrants.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Pretty good size, yeah.
Yeah, I invited my friends, so.
Cool. Well, your
some of them signed up. It's like so dry here. Like everything is just so.
It's been warm this week for sure.
Mm-hmm. Did Aaron sign up?
Oh, Aaron Trayer?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at the list.
Oh, that's okay. You don't have to.
Did he say he was going to sign up?
He was thinking about it.
I didn't.
I mean, I don't.
The whole list.
If there's like too many people, I might get nervous, so it's totally fine. This is like a nice number. It's like way more, I don't know, something about online, it's a little more nerve-wracking. I feel like if I was in a room with people, it would just be like really easy. But
do you know Alicia Odell?
No.
I don't either. She's in the waiting room.
Oh, yeah.
Should I let her in?
Sure.
Are you ready to talk to other humans?
I think I'm ready to talk to people, yeah.
At least commingle a little bit. Oh, I got a few. Julia and Dawn. Welcome, friends. Hey, Dawn.
Hello.
Welcome. Hi, Julia. Julia, those are some fun glasses. Are those special occasion glasses or artist taught glasses? Looks like you're doing some porch sitting, Don.
Yeah, just me and the cats.
I would like to be outside, but I feel like it's just a bit too toasty for me today.
The breeze is pretty great though. It's like never too hot because of the wind.
Bless you for saying so.
I'm trying to find the positives here.
Positive. Jeez.
Hi, Shaw.
Hello, Kateri. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm alive. Does that count for something?
I'm trying to be optimistic here.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Shaw. I'm Kateri's friend, former boss, etc., etc., etc.
Shaw's a newspaper editor.
Nice.
Yeah. Small town, Connecticut.
Cool.
Yes.
Formerly.
So how is it out there? Are you in a train car right now, or
No, but you might hear some train cars going by while I'm talking.
Oh, neat, spectacular, great, super. So how's it? Oh, I'll let you start. I'll let you start off. I'm starting to ask you questions. Like, I know it's hard. Sorry. I'll let you chill out before you.
We'll probably give folks a few more minutes to sign on. We have about 26 registrants this evening, so we'll give people a little bit more time to come on, and then we'll get started shortly.
Sounds good. I see the internet connection over there is pretty well. That's good for a rural area.
We do have internet out here.
Oh, great. Super. So you're still in the 21st century. That's great. Yes. Good.
I keep trying to find ways to incorporate the internet delivered by train concept into a conversation. We had a resident last year who's an architect, had an architecture practice, and had some fascinating ideas about infrastructure and internet, and I can't fully explain it, but somehow it involved internet being delivered by trains.
Cool.
Well, if that was the case, we would have a lot of internet here.
Exactly. Play on our strengths.
It's not actually entirely inaccurate for the current situation. Like my understanding is that Matfield Green and some of these other communities, part of the reason that they have as good of internet as they have is because BNSF is such a high user in them. So it's not literally delivered by train, but it's kind of in a roundabout way delivered by train.
Right. Just spread that rumor and don't explain it. So.
That's how news works anyway nowadays. You know, you spread a rumor and don't explain it. You know, that's most of the news anyway. So there you go.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd feel about if the internet connection went in and out every 30 minutes, though. That might get a little frustrating for.
Yeah.
And the only time you could use the internet was when it was also really loud. It would not be real great for Zoom calls.
Not for Zoom calls, but if you think about it, I mean, conversations typically pause when the trains go by anyway. So that's really the best time to check your emails.
Okay, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, get ready. There's one coming from the south. I can hear it right behind the house.
Oh, could we?
Yeah, we pretty much have the town surrounded here. We can, Dawn's the early warning system, and then Bill and Julia can alert us when one's coming from the north.
Oh yeah, we could do kind of like a wave of train sounds across the.
I'll leave my mic on so you can hear it go by.
Oh.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Hi. Are you in my house?
No, I'm in my house.
Okay.
I'm doing a writing residency in Kateri's apartment while she's gone.
That's
That's
great.
a way to keep the apartment clean. Yeah. That's good.
Little pay it forward residency. I'm a little concerned, Kateri, though, that you don't recognize your own furniture anymore. You've been gone so long. You know, it's like, is that my couch? Or I don't even remember what it was.
Right there.
I mean, it's kind of just a blank wall behind there, but yeah.
Been gone so long, I can't recognize my furniture. Yeah, that's a definitely poet line right there. Good line.
Hi, Abby.
Oh, your mom's on.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Mom.
I'm being polite and having my camera off.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you for joining.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm sorry to be rude.
Oh,
by
there
meeting.
you go.
Oh, everyone is welcome to have cameras on or off as you feel comfortable. No worries.
Does that include me?
Except for you. Oh. As we have folks signing in here too, I might go ahead and ask if you want to say hi in the chat box by maybe typing in your name, where you're calling in from.
What button do I press here?
And the chat box is found by clicking the chat bubble icon at the bottom of the screen, and it'll pop out to the right.
Hempstead, Connecticut. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. What?
No. Never sure. Honey? No, it's familiar. Manhattan, Kansas. Oh, that's pretty neat.
Where the heck is that?
It is pretty great that there's a Manhattan, Kansas.
The Little Apple.
Mm-hmm.
My dear daughter.
The downtown actually looked really cool. I was wanting to go there, but there's like 2 breweries. It's very tantalizing. But.
Well, we're a little past 7, so I might go ahead and get us started, but probably we'll have some more folks sign on in the next few minutes and join us. Welcome, everybody. Excited that you're here. Feel free to have your video on and off. Generally, I think it's good practice to keep yourself muted unless you're speaking. The format this evening, it's going to be pretty casual, and we're going to have plenty of time for questions this evening. I'll probably start off by asking Kateri to share a little bit and answer a couple of general questions, and then we'll open it up to anyone who wants to talk or ask. If someone's speaking, you feel free to use the chat box to write or ask a question, and we'll kind of try to keep an eye on that. But we'll also open it up later. The group is small enough that I think you'll be able to unmute and just ask your question as well. Just to give you a brief introduction, my name is Kelly Yarbrough. I'm the lead administrator for the Tallgrass Artist Residency. It's a pretty small residency program centered in the Flint Hills of Kansas, specifically sort of our heart and home base is in Matfield Green, Kansas, which is a very small community in the heart of the Flint Hills. I manage the program with my team down there in Matfield Green, Derek Ham, who's on the call, who is also Tallgrass Artist Residency. That's how you can tell. He and his wife Catherine have been awesome partners, and really the whole community of Matfield Green. Bill and Julia are on this call, Don, Wolf. It's a really fascinating community full of artists and art supporters. So we've been able to run this residency program. This is our 5th year of having the program, and we do an open call, and we invite 8 to 9 artists to come down to Matfield Green, spend about 2 weeks in residency. They all do a public program while they're here, and then we generally gather everyone back together at the same time to do a group exhibition and a symposium. This year is looking a little different in all sorts of ways for the program, but the fact that Matfield Green is a small community kind of within the landscape, we've been able to move ahead with the program and provide our residents with private lodging and all that's safe and isolated. So, and we've been fortunate in that regard. And we've kind of shifted our programming model to be able to do these Zoom Q&As online, which has actually been really great. We've got a really wonderful response of folks showing up to check in with our residents from all over the country. So we're glad you're here, and we're glad that we're able to host the program this year despite all the challenges. I will also mention that the program is supported by the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission, partially funded by the National Endowment for the Arts. So we're really pleased to have those partnerships and that support. Have I mentioned everything, Derek? Is that a good intro? Did I do good? Okay, great. Well, without further ado, I do want to welcome Kateri to the stage. It's not a stage. Don't think about stages. To the Zoom box. I've actually had the pleasure of hanging out with her a couple of times because she came up to Manhattan for some outdoor programs these past couple of weeks. So it's been really cool to see you and get to know you a little bit, but I'm excited to hear more about your work and your experience here so far. So I might just give it over to you and maybe tell us a little bit about what your experience in Matfield Green has been like so far.
Sure. Thank you, Kelly. And first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to experience this wonderful program. And apparently I'm only the second writer to be doing it, so that's kind of cool. And also, this is the first year that you've opened it up to non-Prairie residents. So I feel honored to be representing an area that is not Prairie. So thank you for letting me be here. And yeah, as someone who loves exploring different landscapes, this is pretty ideal for me as a residency. Ever since I kind of set out driving from Massachusetts, just the whole trip has been quite instructive, and I've just been noticing how I react to different landscapes and how I take everything in around me. Kansas is kind of for people on the East Coast, Kansas is kind of a random place to be going to, but I seem to have somewhat of an affinity for the prairie. I really like the openness of the landscape. And I've spent some time in Nebraska doing a residency a while back, and kind of had a similar experience with the very open little farm roads and everything. And I also live like in the middle of a bunch of corn, which is kind of interesting. It's very almost Midwestern, but just the way that I experience the prairie, it's been very well. I feel like I probably have a somewhat unique, fresh perspective, just being from somewhere else. Like I'm probably more impressed by it in a way, because it's not something that I've seen all my life. But the Flint Hills have just been such a unique ecosystem to experience. It's very, it's very beautiful, but it's also very different. Just like physically, I've been hiking at the Tallgrass National Preserve almost every day that I've been here. And in the Northeast, I'm used to hiking mountains, and that's kind of how I explore nature. Here, it's not flat, but it's a lot easier. It's not strenuous, but there's something about, especially in the summer, just walking out in the sun with no shade and no relief, that is just a completely different experience. So I'm actually way more tired after a few miles of walking in the prairie than I am climbing mountains at home. So it's been, there's a lot of, I think this time of year, there's a lot of harshness in the landscape from my perspective, just because of the lack of relief in the landscape. But just the way it changes, even just from the morning to the afternoon, like the morning is gorgeous, and I want to be out there, and then kind of 9 or 10 o'clock hits, and it's a completely different experience. But it's been really humbling to be in the Tallgrass Prairie, which is almost, so decimated from its original state. Like this is the last 4% of Tallgrass Prairie that's remaining, and the Flint Hills contains, I think, 3/4 of it. So that's not something that I'm really used to experiencing. So I've just been trying to take it all in, and just to be outside and explore as much as possible. But I've been, I'm a birder, as most people on this call know. So one of the ways that I interpret a landscape is through its bird life. So that's, one of the things that was drawing me to this place. There's so many grassland birds that are in a similar situation to the tallgrass prairie itself. They're very kind of rare and declining, but they're doing pretty amazingly well here. So I've been out, and I've been finding little sparrows and wrens and like new birds that I've never seen. And yeah, it's just, on a very simple level, like, I want to hopefully convey in whatever I write after this that Kansas is really, really beautiful, and it's just a rare ecosystem that I've just been really fortunate to experience. And I got to go to a ranch today. Do you want me to talk about that, or?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I do. I was going to ask you about the ranch. Kateri got to go on a special field trip today. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've sort of been learning about is the ways that ranchers manage their land, and fire is a big part of that, but it turns out that, just burning everything is not the way to do it. There's way more subtle approaches that you need to do to maintain the land in a way that keeps it diverse and makes it inviting for wildlife. So I learned about patch burning, and you only burn a little bit so that you have kind of a diversity of grass lengths and levels of growing, and that sort of invites a variety of life to the prairie. And I met Shelley Wiggum, who works for the Nature Conservancy up in Manhattan, at a panel last week, and she was able to take me out to a ranch today. There's a rancher in the area, Jane Koger, and she was kind of the first to pioneer the patch burning system in the Flint Hills, like 15 years ago. And it was like sort of a crazy thing at the time, and nobody thought she was going to be able to do it. And especially like everyone was looking at her as a woman, and just kind of daring her to burn just a little bit. It was just really weird at the time. But I got to talk to her, and we talked about like the difference between cowboys and ranchers, and she drove us around in a little gator all across the pasture, and kind of pointed out the different fields and how some had been burned really recently and some had been growing for a couple of years. And I guess what I was surprised about is that I've read a lot of sort of rosy stories about the Flint Hills and how because the Flint Hills are kind of in their natural state, or they're pretty close to their natural state, the ranching and the grazing coexist really well with the natural ecosystems. But she seemed to not really believe that, and she says a lot of ranchers really could care less about the wildlife, and it's really just a few people who are doing everything right. I was also surprised to learn that like a lot of 3/4 of the ranches around here are owned by absentee ranchers who are like really far away. And she's like, how do you really care about a landscape when you're not really here on the ground? But she's apparently like a ranching phenomenon, and all these cowboys even look up to her, and even if they don't really agree with the methods that she's using, they want to know what she's doing, because she's kind of setting the trend. So yeah, it was just really exciting to be able to go around and have her show me what she's been doing.
Kateri, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your writing practice before coming to the residency. For those of us who aren't familiar with some of your past work, how have you gotten to this place in your work?
Well, I've always been, I'm kind of a poet at heart, and I also write nonfiction essays, some personal essays. So I kind of tend to combine like the personal story with something larger that's around me. So nature and birds and kind of the environment has always been kind of the context for a lot of my writing. And I like poetry because it allows me to kind of say things in a cloaked way, where it's often a metaphorical, interpretation of like the landscape or nature is kind of a symbolic function. But I'm sort of trying to write a collection of essays about birds, and especially the way that different people look at different species and value them. Kind of ever since I was working at a nature center and had to kill baby starlings, I started thinking about like invasive species. Like we think invasive species is bad and other birds is good. So kind of the role that birds play in our culture, and depending on who you are as well. So like as a bird watcher, I get super excited about these grassland birds that are often very obscure and drab. For instance, I can show you a picture really quick. So I've been looking at like this little grasshopper sparrow. Like that's kind of what's out in the prairie in August right now. But these are birds that across the board are not doing like super well. That's a cedron. Like these kind of sing like all day, and I've really gotten to know them quite well. That's a cedron singing from the Tallgrass Preserve. So like me as a birder, I have a certain interest in this landscape, but most people are not necessarily going to get super excited about that. But however, the prairie chickens are kind of this interesting species around here because people find them rather iconic, and they're sort of a symbol of the prairie ecosystem and the Flint Hills. But at the same time, they're still a game bird, and they're hunted legally, the greater prairie chicken. So I'm sort of interested in that, like the complexity there. This species that's kind of getting rare and really declining. Like the prairie chickens are not doing that well. Their populations have kind of tanked since ranching just became very intensive, and people started burning everything, and then just trying to stock the prairie with as much cattle as possible. The prairie chickens did not respond well to that. So there's actually like not enough to hunt anymore. Like the numbers just aren't there, but it's like this tradition, So I was actually
an interesting sort of tidbit on that is Cassidy, the town just to the south of us, used to have this giant sign that said "Prairie Chicken Capital of the World." Sort of a beautiful sign in its own way, and I think the sign kind of fell into some disrepair, but when they replaced it, it doesn't say it anymore. So it just says like home to 100 friendly people or something like. There's some kind of like little more just generic small town thing. So even on the sort of what few billboards we have, you can see the prairie chicken population declining.
Yeah, and I asked this scientist that I met at the panel last week, if he knew any prairie chicken hunters, and he was like, well, I hunt them. So it just kind of goes to show that it's like really ingrained in the culture, and it's not just like a certain group that is hunting them. And not that I'm against it, but as they decline, it's just sort of this what do you really do with this situation? So yeah, that was one of the things I was interested in learning about. But yeah, in general, my writing, that's the train. My writing is kind of a combination of what I'm experiencing in the landscape. Like there's always kind of like a scientific or environmental consciousness. Like even a lot of the poems that I've written, wait, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I like a lot of the poems that I've written recently, there's just an awareness of like the weather and climate change, and things are kind of strange. And just having that larger context of what keeps things from being just solely about me. So that's always a good thing. So yeah, I've been trying to explore some stories that have to do with various birds. Like for instance, I'm working on this piece about the Bicknell's thrush, which is rare because it only inhabits mountaintops in the Northeast, and it has this limited shrinking range, especially as climate change kind of pushes it up the mountain. So this past summer, I went up to some mountaintops and camped, and tried to find the thrush in the morning. But at the same time, I'm also trying to explore my affinity for northern forests and that landscape. And that's actually kind of similar to the situation here in a way. Like you have this habitat that's very stressed and kind of not shrinking, but you have to do a lot to maintain it the way that it's supposed to be. I was gonna maybe read that poem if you want. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Let's see. I can put it up on the screen if anyone wants to follow along. Okay, can you see that? Okay. So I wrote this one after I went up to this mountain in Vermont to look for this thrush, and it's also kind of pandemic related. Because everything is liminal. Everyone is taking off for someplace decisive. My drummer friend gets a one-way ticket to Hawaii to wait things out, eat tropical fruit on the beach. Another friend texts, I have a cowboy boyfriend and might be moving to Alaska in July. Tired of liminal things, I drive north, craving mountaintops, stunted spruces that jut into wind, ice, snow, familiar with the things that limit them. In the last 3 hours of daylight, I haul myself up to their world, pitch a tent amid ferns. Bicknell's thrush sling urgent notes into the almost dark, still here for now. Solstice, the darkness, brief, threadbare. But even here, the hardwoods are creeping up the mountain slopes, overtaking. Liminal zones themselves on the move. The lines between wave and sand and salt marsh and intractable oceanfront real estate. Even here, I am in between that which is now and that which will come. A great silent migration of trees, a forest full of ghosts and nowhere to go but sky. The ground beneath me, mossed, softer than ever. That also reminded me of the prairie, because trees are like the enemy here. It's kind of interesting. for me, because trees are the invasive species, and woody encroachment is almost the greatest threat to the prairie. So I've been learning about that, and just one of the things that I've experienced out in the Tallgrass Preserve is just these these lone trees that are so stark against this landscape. And I kind of got fascinated by some of those trees that cling to the creek bottoms. Here, I'll show you another picture.
You might have to unshare and reshare.
Oh, okay.
Screen, yeah.
Gotcha.
I was going to say, you've taken some wonderful pictures.
Oh.
I kind of had offered, I said, oh, you're a writer. If you just want to like do something with text for the Instagram post that we've been doing, that's allowed. And then I'm glad that you sent the pictures. They've been really nice.
Yeah, thank you. Wait, can you still not see any pictures?
Not yet.
Hmm.
Did you hit screen share again or share screen?
Try it. Okay, share screen. Photos.
There. Yeah.
I'm not sure what's going on there. So there's like these. I think that's a cedar tree, which is one of the trees that's really invasive in the prairie. And these great cottonwoods that kind of cling to the creek bottoms in the tallgrass prairie. But I found myself thinking about just things that give you relief, like trees and water, and how those are kind of those are like the enemy on the prairie in a way. But when it's the heat of August, it's kind of like what you want the most. So that conflict has been kind of in my mind a little bit as I walk through the prairie. I can read something a little bit that I wrote about that from the Instagram posts, if that.
Sure, that'd be great.
People might have already seen this, but oops, sorry. Wait, I think I have to. Do you see me or the picture?
See you right now.
You see me? Okay, that's good.
You.
So I've been reading some of the books about the Flint Hills that are in my lovely housing here. And in one of them, I found this essay by Brian Obermeyer, who I think works for the Nature Conservancy. But it says that native prairie is most abundant in areas with topographical relief, and areas with less relief are more likely to have been farmed and everything. So I'm kind of intrigued by that idea, and then I thought relief kind of on a more poetic level, like the relief that I find in trees and water, for instance. But I wrote, in other words, the land has saved itself by its own rising and falling. Also, it's flint. The sea that once covered the Flint Hills not only carved its valleys, but left behind limestone, shale, flint. No one could plow it. Ironically, this land that now needs fire was created and saved by water. Even more ironically, water can make the prairie less a prairie. Enough rain falls to support trees. Trees invade, make shade, steal water from native plants. Drenching spring rains can wipe out newly hatched prairie chickens. So the trees must be held back by fire. So I was kind of thinking about those relationships between like the elements out here on the prairie a lot.
Yeah. How did
Tell me what you think about living in the bunkhouse and the history of the people that live there.
The bunkhouse?
Yeah, tell me what you think about living there and the history of the people that live there.
Oh, I mean, I love living in the bunkhouse. I haven't really looked into the history of who's lived here before.
Well, you should. It's fascinating. It was there are 5 American Hispanic families in the 30s that occupied those places, worked on the railroad. It's an amazing story.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's definitely.
There should be a picture on your wall of the bunkhouse when it was like that.
Yeah, there is actually.
Well, check it out. It's fascinating.
Okay, I will definitely do that.
Carl is a former long-term occupant of the bunkhouse. He's
Okay.
not just someone who has been sneaking around spying on the walls or anything. He's
Right.
legit.
No, it's definitely a great place to be.
Well, it's a fascinating story.
Kateri, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about how your poetry and your sort of creative nonfiction work inform each other, or what their relationship is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes I struggle, like, is it going to be poetry or is it going to be creative nonfiction? Sometimes I find that, well, usually there's a larger story to be told. If there is a larger story to be told, I need to kind of flesh it out in creative nonfiction. But often I can capture kind of the emotional, the emotional core of it in a poem form, even if there is a lot more that I want to tell in prose. So this week, I don't really, like, some of the stuff I wrote is more nonfiction-y, and then I got a bit into poetry. And I think it's a lot to do with what I'm reading at the time. Like, one day I actually took a book of poetry out into the tall grass, and I discovered that I could actually read while walking, because the trails are so easy and there's really nothing in the way. So that day I was kind of just producing a more poetic reduction of the landscape. But I'll often resort to poetry when I want to be a little bit, I don't want to reveal everything. I kind of want to tell something in a way that's a little bit coded. Like, poetry doesn't really have to have a full story. If there's not like a grand conclusion, that's okay. I feel like there needs to be a little bit more to keep an essay going. So, so like the my experience talking to Jane at the ranch today, like, that would be more of an essay or an article, probably. But just my my impressions of the landscape might be more poetic.
Well, I do want to open it up for questions from others as well. And Shaw actually had a question here about, do you have any good stories about the abandoned-looking town you encountered?
Yeah, I posted some pictures along the way from my travels through the Midwest. No, I mean, I didn't really stop and do anything. Although I did write something that I was gonna read from along the way, which I feel like my whole journey out here was kind of instructive, because it kind of led me to the Flint Hills, which were a little kind of a relief from the great flatness of the Midwest and its eternal corn and soy. But, you know, it's so interesting how the eye beholds a place like the Flint Hills. Like, it seems very beautiful and idyllic in a way, but like the rancher that I talked to today said, you can't really tell by looking. You know, it looks like it's really great, but if you dive into that pasture or whatever, maybe there's no diversity there. Like, it really depends on the specific land management practices that are happening there. So, you know, it's hard being just a casual observer of the landscape. But yeah, if you want, Shaw, I can read something that I wrote about the Midwest, which kind of leads us up to the Flint Hills, as hopefully not that. This is when I was driving through Illinois. It's refreshing to be in a place where all the license plates are the same, where, stalling before I head back to the highway, I can drive for miles through the grid of numbered roads and pass not a single other car. And then the old man at the edge of the road, mowing his grass in the town of Hugo, Illinois, which is so small it must assert with an oversized town sign that it does in fact exist. I take a long time at the crossroads, not sure which way to go, and he notices this too, no doubt, plus my non-Illinois license plate. And when I go the wrong way and turn back a moment later, I know he notices this. I spend a long time thinking about corn, trying to imagine who I would be if I grew up surrounded by this much of it, and so much flatness. Is the buzzy hiccup of a grasshopper sparrow an interruption of the flatness, or a continuation of it? I notice how the old prairie reasserts itself around the edges, around dusty bends in the straight roads, where a once house or barn has crumpled, a pile of fallen bones, or edging the shaded banks of rivers, which accept the tainted runoff from the fields. I pull over and pause in the middle of a crossroads. I always find it intoxicating, a four-way crossing in the heartland, seen so much in all directions, so much possibility gridded onto the earth. But I can find no evidence that anyone else sees it. Metaphorically, it is hard to tell what has come from being able to see so far. All the crops are branded and flagged, the latest offerings from Monsanto and DuPont. A wall of chemicals hits my car as I pass a guy riding on a mower along the edge of the corn with a hand sprayer. I can't fathom what harm could come from letting the edges be. Would they grow wild, brash with weeds, and the curious petunia-type flowers I'd forgotten somehow brighten the edges of these monocrops? Would something take hold and work its way inward and blight the whole crop? Perhaps I could look to the many Trump signs, which also often festoon the edges of the farmers' fields, sometimes right up against the interstate if they are lucky. Perhaps there is something here that wants to safeguard the edges. The 360-degree view does not seem to promote far thinking or diversity of thought. Everything instead is very much the same. Perhaps the inherited landscape dictates that, sameness in all directions. The old grasses grow up at the edges of yards, whose farmhouses hold sway over the vastness around them, maybe sometimes considering how little they have to do with anything. So that's an essay type writing that I did along the way before I got here.
There's a question from Tina. She wants to know, what books did you bring out here with you?
Yeah, I brought a couple of poetry books, one by Ada Limon, which I read out in the tall grass, which was quite instructive. I brought some magazines, just some literary journals that I had, Ecotone and The Hopper, and just read little bits and pieces in that. But mostly I've really just been reading the books that have been in the bunkhouse here on the Flint Hills. And You know, there's the Symphony for the Flint Hills is a group that I discovered, but they put together this compilation of essays about the area. And that's where I got a lot of the research information.
Who was the first author that you mentioned?
There's more that I didn't read, but the first one?
Yeah.
Ada Limon, she's a poet.
Other questions for Kateri?
Yeah. How would you hello? How would you compare and contrast New England to where you are now in Kansas? I mean, what's the comparison to it?
It's it's almost impossible to compare. I don't know. I mean, it's so, the landscape is so wide open. It's just nothing that you encounter in New England. But I mean, it's not, you know, it's not like I don't feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere or anything. It's like, it's not like I'm totally isolated. I see people driving around in cowboy hats, you know, and they're not doing it ironically. Although, you know, apparently what I learned today is apparently the cowboy culture is not necessarily the ones who are stewarding the land the way they should be. If you really want to be a rancher, that's like a whole different thing, and it takes a lot of math and a lot of work.
So is that the difference between a cowboy and a rancher? You were talking about that before.
That seemed to be the difference, yeah. It's more the culture and the, you know, the ego that you tap into.
Is this what Jane Coker was saying?
Yeah. She, you know, she's definitely not a cowboy, a cowgirl.
Interesting.
Yeah. I can read a little more too.
Yeah, do you have any more poems from your time there?
Yeah, I have some snippets if anyone wants to.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to hear that, yeah.
Let's see. Everyone agrees it is beautiful here. Everywhere, insects the size of small hummingbirds leap from the grass, screeching some kind of song. All the streams are full of fish. Where it's just too wide to jump across, a small snake winds away. It looks harmless, but what do I know? Flies swarm the fresh, glistening pile dropped by a buffalo, now gone. Last night I watched the freight trains loosening under stars, unhinged. It's not clear that we deserve this. Already I passed by the meadowlarks without a thought, the cedron chattering away from its perch on dead flower heads. Sometimes I notice everything. Sometimes I just ponder what to make for dinner, or how the pioneers made it across the prairie without ice cream, or at least books of poetry. The prairie is quiet in August, and things stay hidden. Birds in the grasses, the creek in the distance, invisible but for its ribbon of trees. The cottonwoods whisper water with their presence, and the sound of wind running through their leaves. Perhaps because I am lost in their tangled canopy, I don't notice the young black steer that pops up from its nap in the shade, alarmed. I sweet talk it, give it room. In Crusher Hill pasture, a Mississippi kite lowers itself to the earth, and without landing, plucks some small thing up in its talons. It brings its head toward its feet several times until the small creature is gone, not breaking its glide, but slowing. They do this often, I later read. I'd been fiddling with my sunscreen, looked up just in time. Earlier, a buffalo loomed ahead in the path, flanks as vast and leathery as a tree, head to the ground and out of sight, and I'd had to turn around. Are you still not convinced we're in the exact place we're supposed to be at every moment? The way that yesterday I was thinking about prairie chickens when up from the grass burst a prairie chicken, golden brown in the morning sun. When I glance at my phone, it wants to know, do I know the Tallgrass National Preserve? People rate it 4.8 stars. Do I agree? The wind is too much to photograph the rosy purple flower stalks. Just to you, an ocean, but there is none. The streams are small and keep close to the earth, and they're running. In the mornings, they're cold. I slip into a deep spot beside slabs of limestone where there are no to the bottom. I can see there are no snakes. I stay all day, hidden from the trail by young willows, though only one person comes by the whole time, that far out in the preserve. My skin stings with salt, my own. So that's something. I'm not sure what yet.
Where did you read that the Tallgrass Preserve was 4.8 stars?
It's just like what pops up on the Google recommendations or whatever.
I feel like you should publish that poem on Google reviews. Just to,
right.
and then give it like 3 stars or something.
Yeah.
But someone's just reading through, too hot, too windy, and then they're confronted with this.
It's like everywhere I went, it was just following me around. Like, do you know Matfield Station? Do you know? I don't know where else I was.
Thank you for reading that, Kateri.
Sure.
There's a question from Alicia. Has there been anything that surprised you about your time here?
Nothing that. No, not really. I mean, I didn't really know what to expect. I guess. Well, like just today, I was surprised to learn, that like so many people don't actually live here. They live far away. They just own land here. Like little things like that surprised me, but.
Kristen's asking if you found any streams you could jump in.
I did, yeah. Yeah, there's a couple that go through the tall grass, and they're not like super deep, but they're deep enough that you can get in. And I was like a little bit wary of snakes because I know there's poisonous snakes out here. So I only got in if I could see all of the water.
Yeah, you can also talk to your new neighbor Lydia about streams, because I know she was asking about streams to find too.
Okay. Yeah, apparently there's one at the Pioneer Bluffs just down the road.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to rub it in, but we went to the creek while you went to the educational talk in Manhattan yesterday. So sorry about that. Sorry you missed out on a community creek.
Yeah,
time. Yeah. There's another question in there. It says, do you feel any comparisons to your time in Poland to Kansas?
Interesting. I mean, it's just in how rural it is here, and how everyone is just very tied to the land. When I was in Poland, a lot of my dad is from Poland, and some of his family still runs a subsistence farm, and they have cows, and they grow hay, and so we went out and we did the haying, and they piled it up, and it was all very traditional. So I feel like a lot depends on people's connection to the land here in that same way. Yeah, great question. Oh, thank you, Tina.
Well, we're getting close to the end of the hour, but are there any final questions for Kateri?
What do the trees outside look like?
What do they look like?
Yeah.
They're all different. They're all free, but they're very colorful. Some are double stacked cars. Some, I've seen a couple coal trains where it's like, the other day it was like 3 minutes of just coal going by. At least I'm pretty sure it was coal. And sometimes I just never know what they're doing. Like in the middle of the night, they'll kind of stop and then they'll back up. And sometimes there's just a single track on the car, or a single car on the track, and that really alarmed me the first time. I didn't know what was going on. But no, I've always loved trains, so.
Oh, me too. Trains are awesome.
Well, thank you for sharing some of your work with us. I know it's always a privilege to be able to have a quick view into a process that is ongoing. So thanks for taking the time to share some of that work with us.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just starting too. Like I feel like I'll come back here and talk to more ranchers and more people, and hopefully get to dive in even deeper. So.
Yeah, you had mentioned that you're interested in coming back. What were the what would you be most interested in exploring deeper?
Well, just continuing to explore like people's attitudes toward the land and how they what motivates them. Like Shelley Wiggum from the Nature Conservancy said that there's just so much variety in the different ranches, and what they look like, and traditional one as opposed to the one that I saw today, which was just so perfect in every way. So there's just a lot more to see, and it's not the same. Like the Flint Hills is not the same throughout. It's very different from north to south apparently. So I feel like I'm just kind of scratching the surface.
Well, very good. Well, we hope that we will be able to have you back in 2021 when we have our group exhibition and symposium. We're still finalizing dates and plans for that, but yeah, we look forward to hosting you again for that. And yeah, hope you'll stay in touch with us, your community in Kansas now.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining everyone. I will just plug here at the end too that we have another artist talk coming up at the end of the week, well, on Saturday morning. Lydia Cheshawala is an artist who she just came in yesterday, I guess, to Matfield Station. So she'll be sharing a bit about her work this weekend. So you can register for that through Facebook or on our website. So please join us for that on Saturday too. Kateri, hope your time ends well here, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
For joining.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a safe trip back. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good drive.